G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm of course Akaflos, and today we're going to be taking a look at the path of champions, not in the way you expect, because today we're going to be doing a tier list on the 6 new Worldender champions here in the path of champions. So I want to make this video after reviewing all 6 of the champions, because I thought, I could give you my thoughts on some of these new champions, so that most of you out there who are fairly new and you're looking for a place to start, it could be fairly useful. But with that being said, it's still important that if you're watching this, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because this is all based and formulated on my personal experience with the champions here in the channel, of course. But it could be different for you in general, because obviously I could be a little bit unlucky when I was doing a particular run. I could also be not that great at playing certain champions and whatnot, and I believe there's one champion in particular that actually 2 champions that I wasn't really playing too well. So yeah, it could be a little bit biased in that sense. But yeah, like I said, take everything with a grain of salt, and feel free to leave me your thoughts and comments as well. I appreciate any form of feedback and criticism that you'd like to impart. That way we could have a healthy discussion and see why certain champion you would rank higher and why certain champion you would rank lower, and vice versa. Alright, so without further ado, let's quickly get into it. So as you can see here, there are 6 ranks: S, A, B, C, D, and E. And yes, each champion has their own specific rank. So let's kick things off first with Aatrox. Now Aatrox is possibly, well, in my opinion, one of the best from this set. I personally absolutely love his star power here: corrupted weapon, +1 starring mana, game start, create in hand 2 random darkened equipments, and the Inferno change when an equipped ally strikes, reduce the cost of a random card in hand by 1. So yeah, these 2 powers are really good on the Aatrox, and rather accurately, we did really well here with the Aatrox on the reviews here. In fact, I did a couple of reviews. Actually no, I did 1 review, but I did 2 ASOL runs with Aatrox, both showcasing different builds. One was a more cheesy, double gatebreaker build, and another one was a more traditional with more accessible and obtainable relics build. I believe it was an Archangel Staff, and I believe the other relic was, I think, a Stalker's Blade or something. I genuinely can't remember. My memory is terrible, guys. But yeah, basically what I want to say here is that the Aatrox is a really good champion. The only downfall of the Aatrox, unfortunately, is the cost. He starts at 6 cost, which is unfortunately quite expensive to make it a viable champion in the path of champions. I know some of you actually don't really like the Ornn because of his 7 cost, and I agree the cost is kind of expensive, but he is fairly decent if you find some way to get cost reduction. Even though Aatrox has cost reduction, of course, it is RNG based, so unfortunately it's random. It's not going to be permanent cost reduction, but once you get the Worldender off, you should be able to end that particular adventure that you're attempting with absolute ease, no problems there. And also a quick bonus here essentially is that you can also transfer the Darkened Blade from the Aatrox to another unit. Once you play the Worldender, it's going to kick off. You're going to get double Aatroxes. If you're lucky enough to pick up an Ornn on the path as well as a support champion, you can potentially get 3 Aatroxes here, which is super duper crazy. But because, like I said, the cost is the biggest downfall here, I am gonna have to rank Aatrox here at an A. So unfortunately, he's gonna sit down here at an A, and I think let's correct this. I think this is more accurate. There we go, double A's for Aatrox. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on into the next champion here, which is gonna be Ekko. So I only covered Ekko yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, at the point and time of this recording. And yeah, I find it to be a little bit of a mixed bag. I know some of you actually like the Ekko here, and don't get me wrong, I do love the Ekko as well. I had a lot of great times playing him in the old Path of Champions, if I'm not mistaken. He was fairly great back then. He's also really good right now. I just think that, I was probably a little bit unlucky, or possibly, I'm not really good at playing Predict decks, admittedly. There's a lot of decks that I don't really play well with. I think Predict is probably one of them. But yeah, basically the branching possibilities here, his power, when you see a unit in a prediction granted +1/+1, is really good. I believe I paired that up with a Chameleon Necklace yesterday because I thought it could have been great. But one of you actually advised me, a very good advice as well, is to, potentially use a Challenger. That way we could get rid of some units that potentially might be a threat to the Ekko as well as the rest of the cards. You actually gave me a very good advice as well, a very lengthy comment and a really good, how would I say it, criticism? Yeah, constructive criticism of what I did wrong in the game. So I appreciate that comment a lot, man, and I'm definitely reviewing what I'm doing, and hopefully, I'm able to improve from that. Really do appreciate it. But anyway, based on my experience with the Ekko in that particular run, I feel like I'm inclined to give the Ekko a D. And the reason why we're giving the Ekko a D is quite simply because, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't really feeling the connection, if you will. I felt like I was, basically half-assing my way through most of it, and essentially I wasn't really playing too confidently. Another thing I should note as well, also from the comment section, and this guy pointed out really well, he got it spot on. I wasn't really sure what to do because, the predict essentially needs you to think a couple of steps ahead. And admittedly, I think if you have seen most of my videos here, thinking ahead is not my biggest strong suit. I always try to do so, but unfortunately, half of the time or more than half of the time, I always crash and burn. So it's not really good. It's not really one of my strong suits here. But I think for that reason alone, based on my personal experience with the Ekko, I'm gonna have to give it a D. Feel free to leave me your thoughts down below. Maybe you had better experiences and you'd like to teach me a little bit. I'd really appreciate that. I really welcome that too. Alright, moving on, the next champion that we have here is Kindred. So Kindred is a little bit of a mixed bag here as well because unfortunately, I didn't really like the Kindred too. Mainly because I did play the Kindred at 1 star, so probably, it was a little bit weak in comparison. Let's just quickly go over the powers here. I have the Kindred with 2 stars at the moment, but at the time of playing, at the time I recorded that video, I only had 1 star, which was the Ashes to Ashes power, round start, summon a prey. If you already have one, instead grant your prey last breath, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. So first things first, for those of you who are stumbling upon this video for the first time as well, and potentially you're looking for some tips, I'm gonna add in some tips now and then, if I know about any, like I did with Aatrox earlier. So one thing to note here about the Kindred is essentially that prey damage actually stacks. It's not stated in the card itself, but it actually stacks. So the more you leave the prey on the board, essentially not, having the prey die, the more that damage is gonna stack. It's not gonna have a counter on your screen, so it might be useful to actually have a counter somewhere or potentially try to remember in your head, but that prey damage actually stacks. So once you've got your prey damage to, I don't know, maybe, you survive long enough essentially, and you get to maybe 20 turns or something. It's probably not gonna get that long if I'm gonna be honest, but yeah, essentially if you get more turns into the game, deeper into the game, that prey damage is gonna deal a hell of a lot to the enemy Nexus. It's not stated again, like I said, but that prey damage stacks. Please bear that in mind. That prey damage actually stacks. This was also highlighted and enlightened to me through one of the comments in that video as well. I was not paying attention at the time, and I was genuinely confused as to where that extra damage was coming from. But yeah, the prey damage stacks. I cannot stress this enough. But anyway, based on my experience with the Kindred, I feel like I'm gonna give her an E. And the reason why is quite simply because, again, I really wasn't feeling the chemistry with it. I know she could be great, but unfortunately I didn't really do too well in that adventure, so I might be a little bit biased here. Feel free to leave me your thoughts down in the comment section down below as well. But based on my experience with the Kindred in that run, I'm gonna have to give that an E here. Alright, so moving on, we have LeBlanc. So LeBlanc is possibly one of the funnest champions to use in this set, at least in my opinion. I love playing Noxus, I love playing aggro, so yeah, this is definitely right up my alley. And I believe I did a LeBlanc video, I think 2 days ago as well. I brought her into the Nautilus, and my goodness, she is strong. She is epic. For those of you who are new to Path of Champions, of course, and you have not got a Noxus champion yet, I highly recommend starting with LeBlanc. LeBlanc is possibly the best mix between Darius as well as Annie. First of all, she's super duper cheap. 3 cost means she's gonna come onto the board super duper early, and with 5 damage, she's gonna be doing a lot of damage. So let's quickly go over her star powers here. I also have 2 star powers on her. I'm currently grinding her out because I have a ASOL run plan, which I will get it done as soon as I can, of course. But yeah, in terms of the star power here, Deceptively Deadly. This is the first star power, by the way, which was used in that particular video. I'm not going to go over the second star power. Deceptively Deadly, round start, create a fleeting sharpen resolve in hand. It costs 1 less. Really good. You don't even need that second star power, even though it's great. Essentially, if you are able to pick up something like a lost chapter, because they're going to start at level 1, right, and a common relic. So if you can use a lost chapter on the LeBlanc, or essentially if you luck out and essentially get a sorcery or something, you can consistently play the sharpen resolve, and it's going to be epic. Trust me. Check out that Nautilus video. I don't want to self-promote, I promise you, but check out that Nautilus video just to see how useful and how aggressive that LeBlanc can be. Really good champion in my opinion. So with that in mind, I'm gonna give it an S, mainly because, first of all, like I said, really aggressive, really strong, 5 attack stat, by the way, and most importantly, super duper cheap. 3 cost is not too expensive compared to the Aatrox. That's why we're gonna put LeBlanc up top at the S tier. Alright, moving on, we have Nasus. So Nasus is a really interesting one, right? Because essentially the Nasus here operates as a little bit of a farming champion, really accurate to his lore, sorry, not lore, but League of Legends theme, where you want to get some stacks and whatnot. So yeah, that's just the general idea of the card, but it also carries over into POC as well, because essentially if we go over the star power here, Boon of the Ascended, round end, grant your strongest ally +1/+1 for each unit you've slain this round. I think it's a really good power, because at the end of each round, after you've slain enemies, you're gonna get a +1/+1 on that particular unit. So the Nasus is probably not gonna take advantage of this, right off the bat, because he is a 6-cost champion, which means he will come on relatively late in comparison. But the thing with the Nasus is that he doesn't need to be on the board in order to get the passive +1/+1 from his card effect. So I think the Nasus could be a really good champion, even though I've heard some of you have actually said that the Nasus isn't too great. I haven't actually tried out Nasus at 2 stars yet, unfortunately, because I don't have enough fragments, but based on my experience with the Nasus in the in the run that I did here on the channel, I'm inclined to actually give the Nasus a C tier here. So the reason why we're giving Nasus the C tier here is, first of all, he is fairly expensive. He is coming on at 6 cost, which isn't too great, and at the same time, he isn't really going to take advantage of his star power until he comes on. So unfortunately, I don't think the Nasus is that great of a champion in comparison with the next champion that I'm going to rank here. Alright, and the final champion for today is obviously Pyke, and since there's 1 slot remaining, I think you know where this one's gonna go. But before we get to that, let's quickly go over why I'm gonna put the Pyke in the B tier. So Ghost Water Dive. Game start, grant Mariner's Roost to 2 random allies. When you get the attack token, grant it to 1 more, draw 1. I don't know what's the second star power yet. I believe it's something regarding shuffling lurkers back in the deck. I can't really remember, but anyway, let's just talk about Pyke at the moment. So for those of you who have played Pyke in the previous iteration of Path of Champions 1.0, which was the one before this, you will remember how crazy busted that Pyke was. And for those of you who basically miss, the first Path of Champions, I'm just gonna quickly give you the overview of what the Pyke power was. I even put the screenshot or comment up on the screen here. But the Pyke power essentially gave every single ally in the deck lurk. That is a crazy power spike for the Pyke. So obviously it was, absolutely insane to use that, and it was probably one of the more satisfying champions because you're gonna guarantee lurk to every single round, every single attack. So if that power was available to us in this iteration of Path of Champions, imagine how insane that's gonna be with a rally power or something. I think that's gonna be one of the craziest champions and probably one of the most OP champions. If that power was available, I think the Pyke would have immediately jumped up to an S in my opinion, or maybe at least a high A. But unfortunately that power is not available to us. We get this Ghost Water Dive instead, which grants the Mariner's Roost to 2 random allies, and the Mariner's Roost essentially is an item which gives a +1/+1 and a lurk to the item wielder or the item user, if you will. And it's not as great, unfortunately, but it has its uses. If you get it on a unit which isn't a lurker, it could be really beneficial. But unfortunately, if the RNG gives it to a unit that already has lurk, it's not going to be too bad because it's still going to get the +1/+1 buff, but it's not going to be taking full advantage of the value here because you're essentially giving lurk to an already lurking unit. So it's not that great, obviously. It's going to cancel each other out. But yeah, basically that's my gripe with the Pyke. All in all, he's still a really good champion, however, because if you can trigger the lurk consistently and if you can get the Pyke to level up, it's really hard to lose the game. All you need to do is you just need to kill a single enemy and it's just gonna wipe out everything if your attack stat is high enough. But at that point in the game, your attack stat should be relatively high enough to take out most of the enemies. And for that fact alone, I'm gonna have to give Pyke a B tier here. This could be a little bit of nostalgia bias because I definitely enjoyed playing the Pyke in the past, but also at the same time, I think it's fairly valid because as I mentioned, I absolutely love playing the Pyke, especially after he levels up. Those board clears are satisfying, absolutely satisfying. Alright guys, and that is all 6 Worldender champions here in the Path of Champions ranked and tiered. Again, like I said, this is just my personal opinion on most of these champions here, so some of you will have different rankings for some of them. Feel free to let me know down in the comment section down below. I really appreciate that comment as well as criticism as well as feedback. Let's have some discussions guys, because essentially that's how we all get to learn regarding how to play certain champions and whatnot. That's also how we discover about different effects and things that we might not have potentially seen the first time playing and all that. So yeah, definitely feel free to leave your thoughts as well as feedback to me. But yeah, this is all I have for you today. So if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like as well as subscribing. Really do appreciate that support, but most importantly, it's so that you don't miss future episodes or uploads of Legends Runeterra or Path of Champions content just like this one. And with that being said, this is Kavlo signing off. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for joining me as well. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.